I don't really know how I want to start this video, in all honesty. I was looking for a guy to do as my 10th and most likely final offensive tackle scouting report video. Unless you guys want to see more, then just drop their names in the comment section down below. But I figured I was going to stop at 10 for right now, and there were a couple guys. There was the Eichenberg fellow out of Notre Dame. BYU has a guy, a left tackle, being talked about a little bit. But ultimately, I came upon Walker Little, and I'll be entirely honest. The headline that had me hooked was Mel Kiper mocks Walker Little to Kansas City Chiefs in first round in latest mock. And to this point, if you guys have watched my previous videos, I've already given out 4 first round grades to offensive tackles so far. It's one of, if not the deepest position to this point in my mind in the draft, and potentially one of the deepest offensive tackle classes that I've seen in quite some time, right? So would I have a 5th first round graded offensive tackle here in Walker Little? We'll cross that road when we get there in terms of his grade on the next slide, but I wanted to just talk about generally his sort of height, his pro day measurables, as well as his background. So 6'7", 309, which is one of the bigger guys we've seen to this point. 33 and 3/4 inch arms, which are obviously some of the longer arms we've seen to this point. We know how everybody's infatuated with length. Little certainly has it. In terms of his pro day numbers, he ran a 5.30 40-yard dash. He had a 29.5-inch vert, 9-foot 3-inch broad, as well as a 4.59 shuttle. So decent day, right? Nothing too crazy. I didn't really expect the 6'7" guy to have a 4.8 40, but a solid day all around. So why is he mocked in the first round? So I'm trying to find some film on Walker. Nothing too crazy. I'm looking for 2020 stuff. Nope, he's an opt-out, and that's fine. There's been a bunch of opt-outs at this point. As I've said in almost every opt-outs video, right? The big question with these guys is, how are they going to trend? Have they trended up in the last year? Have they trended down? Have they refined their skills, become a better athlete, maybe a more specialized player in certain regards, or have they used the last year to sort of slack off and take advantage of this situation, right? Well, all right, I'm looking at his 2019 potential film, and I only see one game, so I'm watching it. It is what it is. And lo and behold, with 3 minutes left, he tears his ACL. So I'm reading about it, and people are like, "Oh yeah, he tore his ACL in the 2019 season." Okay, that's fine. Now there's even more concerns, right? And then you're digging kind of deeper a little bit, and you realize that was the season opener in 2019. Follow that logic then, and that means that since the final game in 2018, a game against USC on December 1st, that means he's played 3 full quarters of football. I don't quite know how 3 full quarters of football in the last 861 days then gets you into the first round of the NFL draft, right? I don't know what we're talking about there. That conversation is gone. And I shouldn't even stop there, in all honesty. You shouldn't stop at 861, because best case scenario, assuming he plays the regular season opener, that'll be 1,024 days since the last time he's played a full game of football. I don't really know what we're talking about here then in that regard, in terms of him being a potential first round prospect. That would be an insane choice to me as a general manager. And we'll get into the grade. I don't really know how much stock I even put in this grade. I'm not sure this grade really matters, right? Because primarily this is stuff that he did now 3 years ago. So yeah, sure, I thought he was questionable in pass protection 3 years ago. Now, has he got worse? Has he got better? What's the deal? How has he recovered from his ACL? Has he even recovered fully from his ACL? I don't know, right? I have no idea. So I could sit here all day and talk about the flaws in his 2018 tape, because I didn't think it was very impressive. I didn't think it was first round level. In fact, that's what this grade is on. It's on those 4 films that I watched. I graded him as a 67. I'm not even taking into account necessarily the fact that they were 2 and 3 years ago. So what are we doing here, right? I've said in multiple videos now, say Ronnie Perkins, where he was suspended. I am not in the interviews, right? I can't hold your character in question. I have no means to judge that, right? Similarly, I'm not a doctor, right? So I'm not going to sit here and act like I know his recovery process. I know anything about his injury, right? I know it's a torn ACL, and I know he hasn't played football seriously in 861 days. So this 67 is where I thought he was, right? Mel Kiper saying, "Oh, he was a top prospect." Then I don't quite see that. I thought that in the passing game, I thought he was one of the least refined prospects that we've seen in terms of just bad technique at times. And it was better in the 2019 film. That one game, those were 3 promising quarters, but it's just that, right? You have to take those 35, 40 snaps with a grain of salt in my eyes. So we're back to the 2018 stuff. And in 2018, he had a very bad habit of opening his hips and turning his hips towards the sidelines and being the most susceptible tackle I've seen out of the 10 to an inside move, an inside counter. And that's why I gave him such low IQ and awareness, because I've never seen somebody get beat by the same thing over and over and over and over. It rarely seemed like he was getting beat around the edge, but would get beat multiple times a game as a pass blocker as well as run defender on guys just slanting into the B gap, right? And at some point, you have to start picking up on various cues, and you have to be able to read somebody's shifting weight. Okay, if I'm kicking out to them and I'm engaged with them, well, you have to know when he reaches the top of his pass rush arc, if he's not going to get around you, he's going to try and counter back to the inside. If you're a run blocker, right, and somebody's hanging off the end of the line of scrimmage, right? So say there's a 5 technique, then an outside linebacker stepped up. Well, no team is trying to get 2 defenders in a gap. If there's 2 defenders in one gap, then that means there's another gap which has none. So that means that inside guy is most likely slanting across your face. Or like, there's cues here. If a 5 technique has been pretty wide on you and detached from the line of scrimmage for most of the game, and then he slides inside and is now very tight on you, it's most likely that he's slanting across your face. You have to be able to pick up on these things. And it seemed like a sick joke that the guy who I gave the lowest IQ and awareness grade to was from Stanford. I don't know what that's about, right? I thought that he would have been perhaps the best in this area. He was, at least in 2018, the worst. In terms of a run blocker, I mean, he was solid at times. He showed some good tenacity in terms of blocking to the whistle here and there, but way too often was he just playing with terrible leverage to the point that unnecessarily, whether it was a D tackle, a D end, a linebacker, whoever it was that he was engaging with, he was just giving them a chance to get off. Because when you're standing straight up, you can't activate your hips. You can't, you're not using your lower body where you really generate power from. You're not going to get any real push just bumping a guy with your belly, right? Like, that's just not going to work. And too many times Little was getting beat after the fact when he'd already got there. He got in the right position. He just wasn't blocking them. And it was a shame in that regard, because he wasn't some just big lumbering guy who's slow and not getting in position, right? He'd get in position, but then just be so high that these guys, and at 6'7", that's even worse, that these smaller guys are just able to get into his chest and then break away in some capacity. Otherwise, I thought that his hands were solid. They looked much better in 2019. That's actually why I gave him a better grade there than I probably would have solely off 2018. It seemed like he much better understood how to use his length that subsequent season than he did in 2018. It felt like in 2018, a lot of times he waited way too long to throw his hands, and guys would be getting into his chest. Whereas in 2019, just from those 3.5 quarters, he did a much better job striking the near point, whether it was a guy, speed rusher, giving him their shoulder, whether it was somebody trying to power rush him in some capacity, giving him his chest. I feel like he did a better job there. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Otherwise, his balance was certainly questionable. I think that's in large part due to the fact that he's 6'7" and playing at that height a lot of the time, right? There's very little really knee bend, hip hinge, all that sort of stuff. There's very little of that. And I think that caused him to maybe not get dumped on his face a lot of times, as we've seen maybe with some other guys, but I think that it caused him to fall off of his blocks and, again, give up just unnecessary plays. Otherwise, power, strength, he's certainly a powerful guy. You can obviously tell that. And like I said, he did do a good job at times of finishing guys, driving them into the dirt. I look to say that USC game in particular, the December 1st game in 2018, the second most recent time that we've seen him play football. And I mean, he looked questionable as a run blocker virtually the entire game. And then late in the fourth quarter, he had like 4 or 5 really nice blocks in a row where, if he engaged with you, he was finishing you, right? You were on the ground in some capacity. If he was asked to cut off a guy on the backside, he would do a great job, take a great angle, and get that linebacker completely out of the play, right? Things that are tough to do in some respect. Just do it with more consistency, because I didn't see it in any of those other quarters or films, really, right? I just don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. And then otherwise, I gave him, as I said already, a really low awareness grade. And when I say IQ, obviously he could be the smartest guy in this class for all that matters, But I'm talking about your ability to read and react to things, your ability to see what's going on, react to it. I'm talking about your ability to pick up on cues, like I said, and just the fact that he's manned up against guys. And when you're manned up, your entire responsibility is block him no matter where he goes, right? If he goes outside, kick slide out to him and get him. If he goes inside, you're going to have to go from a kick slide into a power step down to cut him off with your feet. That process just needs to speed up. And maybe it has, like I said, we don't know what Walker's been doing since the ACL. Assuming he recovered 8 months, 10 months, however long it was, maybe a year, what has he been doing then in 2020 and early 2021, right? Has he cleaned up some of these issues? Potentially, right? But there's only so much you can do when you're not playing in-game live reps, because there's just a different quickness by which those occur. And again, I hate to keep saying it, but he hasn't seen those now in 3 years. And again, like I said, that's not even accounted in my grade. So it comes out to a raw grade of a 67. You look at the big board, I had to cut off the top 13 names because I had them that significantly lower than the first round. But 70.18, that is so far the lowest grade I've given to anybody in the third round, but at the same time, there's still quite a bit of room there in the third round. So I would say middle to late third round out of Walker Little for me, assuming the medicals entirely check out, right? And that's something that, like I said, I'm not accounting for in my grade. So who knows what's going on there? Could potentially dock even more points off, right? I wouldn't be shocked if there's teams who don't have him in their first 5 rounds, right? I would be significantly more shocked if somebody took him in round 1 than I would be if he goes in round 5, just by example, right? Because the red flags are wildly apparent here in terms of having not played in 2020 like his fellow opt-outs, having not played all but 3.5 quarters in 2019 due to perhaps the most serious or one of the most serious leg injuries you can have in tearing your ACL, but then even having questionable 2018 film, right? I just don't really see what we're looking at here besides, oh, he's big, he's tall, and he tests pretty well, right? And that's the problem. But I don't think we could even just say that, oh, he's some physical freak, right? I mean, you compare him to, say, Sam Cosmi. I wasn't even very high on Cosmi. As you can see, he's my next lowest offensive tackle. Well, he was a physical freak. He was the one who ran a 4.84 40-yard dash and had 36 reps on bench at the same size of Walker Little. Okay, well, Walker Little, yeah, I mean, he's been out 2.5 years, 5'3" at his size. That's pretty good, but let's not act like, oh, this guy is the greatest physical specimen, had the greatest tape in 2018 and those 45, 50 snaps, however many it was that he played in 2019 before he had a terrible injury and opted out subsequently. Like, I just don't think that we're talking about him in the first round. And if your team does draft him in the first round, I would be stunned. I would actually be stunned. I would be at a loss for words, similar to where I am now, right? Because I just didn't see it with Walker, and I was fully prepared to, if he was a great tackle, right? If he had the technique of Rashawn Slater, by example, I would have no problem giving him a first round grade. I'm the film guy. Like I said, I'm not taking into account, oh, he hasn't played in 3 years in my grade. That's not in my grade. There's no category for red flags. There's no category for medical, right? Because that's your people's jobs. That's the interviewer's job. That's the doctor's job. If he was the best tackle in this class, technique wise, if he was the most tenacious run blocker, if he took the best angles, if he had the best hand placement, if he played with great balance, guess what? He could be a 90, an 85, an 80. He could be a first rounder. That's all fine and good. The fact was, for me, he simply wasn't. And then you add into the fact all those potential red flags and concerns. And I think if I was seriously the GM of a team and crafting a big board, all those things considered, he would potentially be even lower. And I'm not even saying that he can't be good, right? I'm not saying that he can't become a starter. I'm not even saying that he can't become a great starter by any means. I've had teammates who, okay, they tore their ACL and then they came back and were able to continue to build upon where they previously were at. Obviously, that lost time can't be made up, but you can make up for it in other ways, right? Oh, you have a leg injury. Well, maybe you're bench pressing 5 times a week, right? One of my teammates, he increased his max by like 75 pounds over the course of returning from an ACL injury, right? So maybe he's going to come back and be some super strong guy that just looks completely different on film. And there's a chance of that. Not going to say it's a good chance nor a bad chance, right? There is just a chance. But when we're talking about guys developing into great players and how the skills that I see on film are going to translate into the NFL, it's a probability thing, and I just don't think the probability is nearly as high as first round discussion, second round discussion, early third round discussion. I mean, I would much rather take a gamble on any of the other 9 guys we've done to this point, and very, very likely some of those other guys that I'm not going to do, right? Just because he's my 10th highest tackle to this point doesn't mean he would be my 10th. He very well might be my 15th, 20th, right? We just don't know because I don't get paid for this, so I'm not able to spend as much time going all the way down and covering everybody, right? But yeah, with that being said, I think that for the most part wraps things up. Obviously, if you guys disagree with me, if you guys are Walker Little fans, Stanford fans perhaps, if your team drafted a Little, right, and you're coming back to this video a month from now when the draft is over, I'd love to hear not only what your thoughts are on him, but also what your thoughts are on the value that you got with him, right? Did he go in the late first round, right? Did you cry yourself to sleep that night? Did he go in the second round? Are you okay with that? Are you a good team who only has 1 or 2 holes and you feel like Walker could fill them, which I think is what Mel was going for with the Chiefs selection. But man, I would much prefer to take a chance on any of the other 9 safer guys that I've graded ahead of him. So yeah, I mean, with that being said, I think that about wraps it up. I hope Walker was able to fully recover from that ACL. I hope he was able to improve and specialize those skills over the past year that he's opted out. And I hope he has a long career. I'm just not quite sure that from a probability perspective that it's high enough to take him in that round 1, round 2, even early round 3 discussion, right? Anything after that, a lot of times you're taking specialists or you're betting on potential, right? You go sort of these boom bust guys or guys to fill out the depth chart. At that point, yeah, you could get him, and I don't even want to necessarily say, oh, redshirt him, because he's technically been redshirted for the last 1,025 days, right? So that's a problem, you know. But if you draft him as a potential developmental guy, I mean, I don't have a problem with that, right? If you do get him in the 4th, 5th round, I don't necessarily hate it, right? I think that there is some potential given his size and his athleticism, but you don't get better at playing football by not playing football, right? So it's tough for me to really bank on this guy having got much better at football when he's been absent for so long. So that being said, obviously, to make sure you're not absent from my future uploads, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit anything that supports the channel if you guys did enjoy the video, because it is always greatly appreciated. So with that being said, I'm mic'd up. Now I'm micing out. Peace, guys.